FanDuel has conference win totals already out for this year. Like, you can bet it right now. I mean, if you think a team's going over or under, you can bet it right now. But I do want to tell you, I've got a paper popper of a stat, which is wild because it's March. Very rare, maybe our first paper popper stat in the history of March. I got the SEC win totals in my hand right now, okay? First off, you'll notice there are no double-digit over-unders for the first time, I think, ever in the SEC. But here's what you need to know, okay? This is not just the SEC. This is all of college football last year. In the Power Four, look at the closing over-under numbers. 27 overs, 41 unders last year. So if you just bet under for every Power Four team, you hit it 60%. Markets were a little inflated, as it turns out. The public bets overs, unders actually hit. It gets really, really interesting when you go conference by conference. 8 of the top 10 teams in the SEC went under. So out of all the highest win totals in the SEC, 8 of the 10 highest hit under. 10 of the top 13 in the Big Ten went under. All 7 team totals, all 7 of the highest team totals in the Big 12 went under. 6 of the highest 7 in the ACC went under. So that means there's a ton of undervalue at the top, a ton of overvalue at the bottom. Has the market corrected itself? Well, in the SEC, I think there's a reason that even Georgia and Texas don't have an over-under of 10.5 or higher. Also, the league's really deep and competitive, and there's probably not an elite team, perceptionally, to start the year. All right, so as it relates to these SEC win totals, I think Georgia's getting a ton of respect. There are 4 teams with win totals of 9.5. Texas, Georgia, Tennessee, Alabama, they all have an over-under of 9.5. Now, it's important to note at FanDuel, they do not put round numbers out there. So you'll never see 10 or 9. It'll always be a half a game. As a result, you got to pay attention to the juice on this. Like, Georgia's heavily juiced to the over. So you'd have to pay more of a premium to bet Texas over 9.5, Georgia over 9.5. Bama, I think you get a little value if you bet over 9.5. So they look even. They're technically not all even. Broad strokes purposes, they're even. I think Texas has a very workable schedule. So that 9.5, even with Arch starting, they go to Ohio State to start the year. They go to Georgia late in the year. Big questions around both those teams for different reasons. If Texas splits those games, I think they'll hit the over. I think. Georgia getting a ton of respect at 9.5. Like, Georgia earns the respect. They earn benefit of the doubt. They won the SEC in a down year last year by their standard, but there's probably going to be some under money come in on Georgia for the first time in a while, I think. Vandy's at 4.5, Colin. I mean, hey, quick timeout. Check and see if you're subscribed to the YouTube channel. If you're not, I humbly ask that you click subscribe. It's free. It doesn't sign you up for anything. What it does is it helps us keep this show free so we can just do college football year-round. All right, back to the clip. What have we bet Vandy over every year? So their over-under win total is 4.5 again. And what do we see? We see Charleston Southern on here. We see Georgia State at home. Revenge game, by the way. And we see Utah State. I'm going to chalk those up as 3 wins. Georgia State beat them last year. I'm going to chalk those up at 3 wins. So I'm already at 3-0. I have to find 2 more wins. Now, their schedule in conference is loaded. They go to South Carolina. They go to Alabama. They got LSU, Missouri, at Texas, Auburn, Kentucky, at Tennessee. No favors done for the Commodores, but they are top 10 in returning production from a 7-win team. Diego Pavia is back somehow at quarterback. This is a team that can win 2 games in conference, I think. So I will yet again bet an over. I will be holding an over 4.5 ticket for Vanderbilt. These 6.5s and 7.5s are wild. Colin, could you throw up the entire list one more time? Because the middle of the sandwich is really what interests me the most. So there are, let's see, 1, 2, 3, like 4 or 5 teams that have over-under win totals of either 6.5 or 7.5. It's your Missouris, your Auburns, your South Carolinas, your Floridas. That's going to be wild. Like that entire chunk of the SEC. Missouri has one of the most manageable schedules in the conference again this year. They're 5th in returning defensive production. If if it just pans out for them, if they don't get crushed by injury, I think Missouri is a solid over candidate at 7.5. Auburn, I have no clue. Auburn has 3 top 20 classes baked into their roster right now, 2 top 10 classes. They just went and got Jackson Arnold out of the portal. This was a turnover-prone team last year. He was a turnover-prone player for Oklahoma last year. If they just invert the turnover paradigm, they get Georgia and Bama at home. It's an odd number year, so they get Georgia, Bama at home. Over under 7.5. Who in the world knows? Florida at 6.5. That's a scheduling number because Florida is one of the top 15 teams in the country, but their over-under win total is reflective of the ridiculous schedule they have to play. They're top 20 in returning production, though. They go to Miami early. There's a stretch there. There's a bye week in there, but they go to LSU, to Miami, Texas, at Texas A&M. That stretch is just, hey, they play Long Island, though, so I'm sure someone will bash them for that. Win totals in March. We prayed for times like these back in the day. It's great. It's wonderful.